So Bernie Sanders made an appearance on The View recently, and I wanted to show you guys a few clips from that kind of segment. But before I get into that, I just want to make note of the fact that most people would consider The View to have kind of a left-wing bias, but I would push back on that and make the case that The View and many other organizations that people consider having a left-wing bias, such as CNN or MSNBC, they don't have a bias towards the left. What they have is a bias towards corporate Democrats and establishment Democrats. They have a bias towards the Democratic Party, but I would make the argument that they certainly don't have a bias towards the left, definitely not the economic left. So let's take a look at the clip, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Senator Sanders, this is Sunny. You say that the coronavirus crisis proves that our for-profit healthcare system is a failure. Can you explain why your Medicare for All plan would work better in this kind of scenario?
Well, right now, there is, for two reasons. Number one, there is growing anxiety in this country that people are increasingly unable to afford health care, or that they may not have any health care at all. Right now, before the epidemic, we were looking at 87 million people who were uninsured or underinsured. And now, when millions of people are losing their jobs, they're losing their health care. What do? We have the absurd situation that the recent stimulus bill covered you for the cost of the testing that you may need for the coronavirus. It did not cover the treatment. So you've lost your job, you may not have any income, and now you're worried about health care. What Medicare for All does is not a radical idea. It does what every other major country on earth does. It guarantees health care to all of our people not tied to employment. You lose your job, you got coverage. You're a small business person, you got coverage. No deductibles, no copayment. Second point about the dysfunctionality of the current system. How does it happen? I want everybody to think about this. We are spending twice as much per person as any other people on earth for healthcare, and yet we don't have enough ventilators. Our doctors don't have enough masks or gloves or gowns. That doesn't sound like a strong public health system, the likes of which we should have.
So I'm going to be showing you guys 3 different clips, and so that is the first clip, and I honestly don't even think that was a bad question. I think that, Bernie Sanders is making a claim that Medicare for All would be very beneficial in this situation, and he was asked to justify that claim. So I think that was actually a fair question, and I also think that Bernie Sanders did a really good job answering it. I think that he makes a really good point there, because so often we hear the argument that people love their employment, the health care that's provided to them by their employer, but it doesn't address the fact that, well, if you get fired, then all of a sudden that, it doesn't matter how much you like your employer-provided health care, you don't have that anymore. And so it kind of just points out that, especially in a time of really rapid job loss like we're seeing right now, it is so important to make sure that everybody is covered, because so many people are losing out on their healthcare at the moment. And then the second part I also think is a pretty good answer to that question. I think that one of the big things that people kind of need to understand about this situation is that we do see this shortage of ventilators and hospital beds and certain supplies. And one of the reasons we're seeing that is because we have this for-profit healthcare system, it isn't necessarily profitable to have a surplus of beds or a surplus of masks or a surplus of ventilators, because you normally wouldn't have that many people coming in needing as much treatment as they're needing right now. So there isn't really a profit motive to have the necessary number of beds, for example. And so when you take the profit motive out of it and you have it run by the government, and the government just can plan for things like a pandemic, you're able to better prepare for situations like this. So I think that Bernie Sanders did a really good job answering that question. So let's take a look at the second clip.
Go,
Senator,
Sarah.
This is Sarah. Just to push back on that a little bit, countries with universal healthcare routinely have to wait longer and sometimes die before receiving many of the medical treatments. Right now, if you can't afford to wait, because Corona isn't, they're having this, it's not something you can wait on health care for. So what would your counter be to why that would be beneficial right now?
Well, Sarah, the truth is that there are long waiting lines before coronavirus. There were long waiting lines in the country for people who need health care. The truth is that in our country, there are, in many instances, other countries for normal procedures get health care a lot more rapidly than we do in this country. We have areas of America right now in rural areas, for example, where you don't have the kind of doctors we should, where hospitals are being closed down. We are paying far more for prescription drugs than other people in any other country. In some cases, 10 times more, because we don't negotiate prices for prescription drugs. So I don't accept the basic premise of your argument. I think the truth is that in Canada and other countries around the world, their healthcare systems are far more popular than our system is, because the function of our system, to be honest, is to make billions of dollars in profits for the insurance companies and the drug companies, not to provide quality care to all people.
So now that is an example of what I would consider right-wing framing of a question. It's a supposed left-wing show, but I think that was right-wing framing of a question. Just because it plays off of this idea that it's only countries with universal health care that have to ration care. And that just isn't true. In the United States, we ration care all the time. We just ration it based on the size of your wallet. We don't ration it based on need like other countries do with universal health care systems. Perfect example. Recently, there was a 19-year-old. He tested positive for coronavirus. He needed to get care, and he didn't have insurance, and so they didn't take care of him, and he died. And that's so sad, but that is a perfect example of, we also ration care here in the United States. And you can say, like, oh, some people can't afford to wait. Well, here some people can't afford to even get treated. And so it's such a misconception that other countries ration care and the United States doesn't. We certainly ration care here. We just do it in a different way. And then the other part of that is that I think that Bernie Sanders did a decent job answering that question. I honestly would have like to kind of have him address the right-wing framing of the question. I think that would have been a better answer than bringing up kind of the cost of pharmaceutical drugs. He kind of touched on it, that there were long waiting lines before coronavirus here in the U.S., but that it just wasn't the best answer on Bernie Sanders' part. I really would have liked to see him kind of pick apart the question a little bit, but it seemed like he was a little caught off guard by it. But anyway, I'm going to show you guys the next clip right now.
Senator, some are accusing you of using the pandemic to push Medicare for all. And they're saying, at this time, we should put politics aside and come together behind the president. What is your response to politicizing this allegation that everyone is politicizing?
Well, I don't know who is making the allegation. I have political opponents who make all kinds of accusations. But should we put politics aside and all come together? Of course we should. And when we all come together, it seems to me we have to do several things. One of them is guarantee health care to all people right now. The absurdity that you may be diagnosed with the coronavirus and you go into the hospital and you spend thousands of dollars getting treated, and maybe, God willing, you come out alive, well, you got a huge bill out there. If you're being diagnosed with cancer right now, the truth is that we have 500,000 people a year who go bankrupt because of medically related bills. So let us come together. You're absolutely right. But in coming together, we got to do a couple of things. And one thing is say that, especially in this crisis, people should not have to worry about the cost of health care. They should not have to worry about whether they can afford prescription drugs or not. They should not have to worry whether the pharmaceutical industry is going to make billions of dollars by creating a vaccine that will be unaffordable to ordinary people. It must be free to all. So let's come together on that premise.
So I honestly didn't really care for Bernie Sanders' answer there, just because we are dealing with a crisis, and I get it. So you shouldn't be like a partisan hack. You shouldn't just say that, like, oh, because Donald Trump does X, that means it's a bad thing. Like, even though you don't care about what X actually was, you just say Donald Trump did it, so therefore it is bad. I definitely don't agree with that. But I would push back on the idea that in a time of crisis that things can't be slightly political, just because, when you have a crisis, you are dealing with certain policies to deal with that crisis, and policies are going to involve some politics. Because, the fact of the matter is libertarians, they don't think that the government should do anything about the crisis. They don't think that the government should have any hand in what's going on right now. And then you have more corporatists that believe that we should bail out large companies. And, then you have people on the left that say that we should, bail out everyday people. And so I just feel like it's just wrong, the framing of it, that we shouldn't be dealing with politics at the moment, just because, like, I get it, you know, in a time of crisis, you don't want to be hacks about it. You don't want to be just hacky and you just don't like someone, so you're going to say that what they did is bad. We shouldn't do that, but I do think that it is fair to criticize certain policies, because some policies are good, some policies are bad, and you are going to have an idea of how we should handle this crisis, and other people are going to have their idea of how they're going to handle the crisis, and so it's okay to debate those ideas, but what's not okay is to be hacky about it. So I get the heart of the question, but I do think that it's a little misleading, because we should be debating policy right now. I think that debating policy is very important, because there's a wide political spectrum, and everyone on the spectrum has a different idea of how we should handle this crisis. Anyway, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you disagreed with anything I said, please leave a comment down below. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and have a great day.